Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you for joining us for today's talk on Design Like a Attacker and Build Like an Engineer. I am Shilpi Mittal from Tyson Foods, and with me is Ankit Gupta from Accetter Finance. We are here to deliver some talk about secure SDLC. So let's ground the reality where most breaches doesn't require a sophisticated zero-day exploit. All it take a weak trust boundary or a stolen token. That's enough for attacker to walk right in into our system. And our answer is very simple, but yet powerful. Design like an attacker and build like an engineer. Let's um, uh, let's design like an attacker means by mapping trust boundaries, imagine abuse path, and set secure default. So gaps are closed before code ships. Design like an engineer means disciplined execution, enforce least privilege, design isolation, utilize automated checks in CI/CD, and plan for rapid recovery so that one mistake doesn't spiral into crisis. By the end of this session, you will know practical plans and a shared vocabulary that help align development, security, and leadership. As we go through, we keep one question in mind. If someone is stolen a valid session in your product today, how far they can get. With that challenge in mind, let's look into the roadmap for our time we spend together. So we will start with reality check on 2025 threat landscape, the top attack method, and the vulnerabilities where they creep into software development lifecycle. Then we will shift into first theme, design like an attacker, and this is about putting adversaries' hat during design, threat modeling, secure defaults, and spotting abuse cases before code ships. After that, we will move into second theme, build like an engineer. This encompasses of discipline practices, automated tests, and release gates, as well as architectural patterns that prevent damages and resilience strategies that ensure system remain stable. Um, we will also explore how AI is reshaping in 2024 and 2025. AI has become a double sword. It is a supercharging defender, but it also gives attacker new tools. We will look both sides of that. Finally, we will also look into future proofing recommendations, a practical plan for you, which you can take away for your next steps. By the end, you will have a both clear picture to raise risk and a modern framework for building software that defend itself. With that roadmap, let's dive into 2025 threat landscape. So first, let's talk about the vulnerabilities. From last year alone, over 30,000 new software flaws were identified, representing a 17% increase from previous year. Zero day was alone exploited within day of disclosure. If you remember the MoveIt breach in 2023, a SQL ingestion that hit dozen of organization almost immediately. Next is credentials. This is where the phase 2024 stolen credentials were responsible for approximately 30% of breaches on par with direct application exploits. And it's easier than ever. An active market of MFA bypass kits that are intercepting one-time code so that attacker can turn phishing campaign and dark web dumps into instant access. Then we have phishing and social engineering are still huge, roughly a quarter of breaches, but tactics are evolving, where we are seeing fewer generic blasts and more targeted campaignings, even AI-powered deepfakes. And finally, supply chain. These have rising more than fourfold in recent year, and analysts predict nearly half of organization will face one of that by end of 2026. Um, the model is simple: compromise one vendor, reach all their customers. SolarWind demonstrated devastating impact that it can have with 18,000 downstream victims. And then attacker do not even need to storm your firewalls. A weak link anywhere in the ecosystem or unpatched code or an stolen credential or insecure supplier opens the door for attackers. To close those doors, we need to understand where the software development lifecycle itself most fragile. First, we need to understand security is baked in, not bolt on, from very first blueprint to the final deployment. Security has be a part of foundation. Think like designing a bank. You plan vaults and reinforce walls from this starting, not a structure you built and then try to patch it later with a lockpad. The same applied to software security. It must be architected into design, not slapped afterward. While designing, we actively put on their adversaries' thoughts. During design, we map trust boundary, imagine abuse cases, and close gaps early with secure defaults. For example, identity system might ship with MFA required out of the box rather than leaving customer to harden it later. Build a software or system mean discipline execution. We design for failure and containment. Think of an example like a watertight compartment in a submarine. So one breach doesn't sink the entire vessel. This translates into segmentation, which is networks, least privilege, and fault isolation. We also want systems that act like a immune system, constantly sensing anomalies, automatically quarantining compromised components. And finally, it spans the entire software development lifecycle, encompassing planning, designing, coding, testing, and deployment, operation. um, and then we have threat modeling at a design code, review and analysis during development itself, and we can perform pen test during release and design monitoring in the production so that we do not have any weak links, no blind spot. It's essential uh, to think like an adversary, to intercept attacks and apply engineering discipline to make resilience the default. With that foundation set, let's look at the cost of not doing this, rising price of insecure system. Before we dive into threats and defense, let's pause here and understand what really is at stake. Breaches are more expensive than ever. According to IBM and others, the average cost of a data breach hits $4.45 million in 2023, the highest ever recorded. This include direct cleanup and notification cost, as well as lost business and reputational damage. In sector like healthcare, the average top $10 million per incident. At the same time, the scale exposure is staggering. In 2024, the 35 most significant breaches alone resulted in the leak of 5.4 million records, and privacy fine exceeded $3 billion. That's personal data, trust, and brand equity being lost on a massive scale. The common denominator here is people, approximately 74% of breaches are attributed to human error or social engineering. One click on phishing, or one miss cloud configuration, one admin forgetting to lock door a bucket, and suddenly an attacker has a foothold. And these aren't just digital consequences. We have ransomware taking pipelines failing, creating fuel shortages, hospitals breaches that force ambulance to divert mid-route. Insecure system can compromise critical services and pose a risk to human safety. The message is clear. The cost of insecurity is unsustainability. That's why we cannot rely on patching after the fact. We need security design and system from the starting. So, how are attackers actually getting in? Let's look at 2025's data. So now let's talk about software development most often, where software development security most often fail. Insecure design from day one, which is one cost. If we skip that model and security requirement early, flaws get baked into our architectures. Dependency and supply chain risk. Every application shipped with dozens of open source libraries. If we do not keep them up to date, we inherit other people's vulnerability into our system. Pipeline and tooling attack. If CI/CD environment is compromised, attacker can slip in malicious code before we even realize. And then we have misconfiguration and uh, deployment error. Things like open cloud bucket or default credentials are still among the top breach causes. Human factor in design. Features built without considering abuse cases, like an API without rate limit, become easy entry point. The common thread. These weaknesses are preventable, but only if we shift security left into the earliest life cycle of software development. So, what does that look like in practice or in practical? Let's walk through how we can build security in step by step. When we talk about designing like an attacker, we really talking about spotting the weak points in software development lifecycle, because risk creep into at every stage of it if we are not deliberate. At this stage of design, insecure decisions like skipping authentication on critical features or choosing a weak hash algorithm become part of blueprint. That's why OEPS added insecure to its top 10. If we do not do the threat modeling and review architecture early, we are building blind, and those flaws are expensive to underwind later. At implementation, attacker count on our shortcuts. Modern apps relies on hundreds of open source libraries, and everyone is potential weak link. Think of Log4j. One flaw triggered a global scramble. In 2023, there were 2.1 billion downloads of vulnerable components, despite 96% having a fixed version available. Attackers know we are often slow to patch. That's why practice like SBOM tracking and software composition analysis matters most. At the build and pipeline stages, if you design like an attacker, you're going to go after CI/CD, compromise a build server or a developer account, and you can ship your own malicious code. That's precisely what happens in the Codevac and SolarWind incident. To defend, we need signed builds, isolated runners, and strong access control, hallmarks of engineering discipline. Finally, deployment and configuration. Attacker loves misconfiguration because they are easy wins and open storage bucket, a default admin password, a sloppy firewall rule. That's a free pass. In 2023, one misconfiguration bucket exposed emails and SSNs from multiple companies. We counted that automated infrastructure as a code, scans and insecure defaults baked into templates. The key takeaway here is design like an attacker means intercepting how flaws appear in each phases. And build like engineer means embedding controls and automate so that flaws are shut down early. Do that uh, they do that constantly happens, and they do not just close cracks. You raise the cost for attackers and lower your own cost to fix it. So far, we have seen how design, choose, shape become outcomes. And now I will request Ankit to take it over and walk you through the engineering half part and how testing, architecture, and resilience practice make system stand up even when attacker gets in. Over to you, Ankit.
Thank you. So thank you. Now let's shift into the engineering side and talk about the architecture. Here the goal is straightforward: limit the distance an attacker can move through or gain an entry. The first strategy is micro-segmentation. In the past, the flat networks meant that if you broke in once, you could roam everywhere. With micro-segmentation, each workload is assigned its own narrow trust zone, containing only the connection it truly needs. So, for example, the authentication service lives on its own subnet, reachable only by the web frontend. And if malware lands on the user's laptop, there's simply no path to the finance database. Second is the strong identity, which is basically the zero trust. Internal IP addresses are no longer a free pass. Every API call, every service to service request must be authenticated and authorized with strong identity, service accounts, certificates, tokens, even MFA for sensitive actions. Combined with that with the least privilege, you shut down the lateral movement. If one service is compromised, it can't automatically talk to another without the explicit permission. Then we have the compartmentalization. Think of it like a ship with watertight compartments. One breach doesn't sink the vessel. In software, that means isolating the components. If users upload files, process them in a sandboxed container, not in your production runtime. Keep them in your web. Keep your web servers, app servers, database servers separated with the narrow, well-defined interfaces. Then we have the last is the the second last is the least privilege, which is basically underpinning all of these. Users, services, and processes should run within the bare minimum rights. If a web app only needs to read certain tables, don't give the database admin access. In cloud environment, that means fine-grained IAM role, also called as RBAC. It's already there from the 5-10 years, but we don't follow that. At the OS level, that means accounts with minimal file and directory permissions. And finally, the safer technology choices, the languages like Rust and Go, eliminate the entire classes of memory bugs, frameworks that validate the input validation by default, reducing the role of the odds of a small coding mistake. That's then the bottom line, the design choke points, the compartments everywhere, segment the network, enforce identity at every hop, sandbox the risky process, run the least privilege, and choose safer tech. So architecture isn't just about the walls and the compartments. We also need to design for failure. So system limp rather than collapse when something goes wrong. So up to now, we have talked about keeping attackers out and containing them when they get in, but building like an engineer also means planning for the day when something does break. Attacks will happen. The goal is to bend without breaking. The first principle is designing for failure. This comes straight from reliability engineering. Assume that servers, services, and the network links will fail or be attacked. If a DDoS floods one region, redirect traffic to another, and make sure critical services are fail safe, not fail open. For example, freeze the risky transactions or on anomalies while the rest of the system keeps running. Next is the fault isolation and bulkheads. The circuit breaker pattern ensures service A doesn't hang just because service B is down. Rate limiters keep API being overwhelmed, whether by a bug or by a denial of service attack, so issues stay local and don't cascade. Then there is immutable infrastructure. Instead of patching the hacked servers, replace them with the hardened golden images and automation. You can build from a clean state in minutes. It's faster, cleaner, and removes the hidden malware very early. Backups still matters, but they must be isolated so attackers can't encrypt or delete them. An isolated recovery environment is like a digital wall cut off from daily system. Finally, the chaos engineering for security. This is a new buzzword launched in the last 2 years. Intentionally simulate failures or breaches. What if a critical security service is shut down? What if credentials leak? Do we detect any unusual logins promptly? Then these control environments actually provide the confidence that defenses and recovery process remain effective even under pressure. So in short, resilience means a system can contain damage, recover fast, and keep essential functions running. Now let's take a step further. What if system itself could detect, respond, and defend against the threats in real time? That's what the self-defending mechanism comes in. So far, we have focused on making systems hard to break into and resilient if something fails. Now let's go further. What if system could actively defend itself in real time? The first layer is continuous monitoring with anomaly detection. Instead of just matching known signatures, we teach the system what normal looks like and flag anything that's not. Think of a database that handles typically 100 queries a minute, suddenly spiking to 1,000 queries trying to dump tables, or an account constantly logs into from Texas suddenly shows up in Russia, accessing the HR files. Tools like UABA, user entity behavior analytics, works like a nervous system, alerting when something feels off. Detection isn't enough. Automated response is also critical. When compromise is apparent, speed matters. So if malware shows up on a machine, quarantine it instantly. If a cloud server behaves suspiciously, isolate it from the load balancer. Next is the deception technology, digital tripwires. We plan fake credentials, decoy servers, or bogus admin shares that no real world touch. If an attacker stumbles into them, alarms triggers immediately. It forces attackers to second guess everything they find. Then we have RASP, which is runtime application self-protection. It brings defense into the application itself. If someone attempts SQL injection or command execution, RASP detects and blocks it in real time. Finally, the baseline integrity monitoring. The system knows exactly what its critical files, binaries, or configs should look like. If something changes, such as tampered executable or disable encryption, it flags the issue or rolls back to the clean state before the damage spreads. Together, these mechanisms make a system active in its defense, detecting, responding, sometimes neutralizing threats automatically, instead of relying on humans to catch everything. But there is a new force multiplier in this story, which is AI. Now we'll look into that part. Yeah. So AI has become a massive part of cybersecurity, and it's truly a double-edged sword. On the defense side, AI is transforming threat detection. Traditional monitoring inundates analysts with thousands of alerts, most of which are noise. Machine learning can baseline what normal looks like and flag the anomalies. For example, if a database never sees bulk queries at 3 a.m., but suddenly thousands appear, AI will flag it. This is where AI shines, spotting slow, subtle intrusions humans might miss. AI also accelerates the incident response. In 2023, we saw the rise of security co-pilots, AI assistants trained on cybersecurity data that they can stitch together logs, identify what happened, likely happened, which systems are impacted, the blast radius, and the recommended next steps. IBM found that the organizations using AI and automation detection can contain breach 100 days faster on an average. So it's also changing the vulnerability discovery. AI can scan code for insecure patterns, flag dangerous API calls, and even suggest fixes. So integrated into IDEs, it's like spell check for security, warning a developer in real time, and even helping the developer to automate certain parts of threat modeling. But we can't ignore the attacker side. GenAI is already crafting more convincing phishing emails, probing cloud environment for misconfigurations, and mutating the malware to dodge protection. We are seeing proofs of concept for AI systems that can autonomously hunt for 0 days. The threat landscape is becoming faster, more adaptive. It's an arms race. So the upside is the companies that fully invest in AI-driven defenses, they say the real payoff. Breaches cost on average $1.76 million less what AI and automation are in place doing. So incidents are being detected earlier, contained more quickly, and often prevented altogether. Then the AI is also being used by attackers. So defenders have no choice but to operationalize is so responsibly with guardrails and human oversight. Otherwise, we give you but speed, and this race, speed is the matter of survival here. So with AI in the mix, the questions become, how do we future-proof our systems? We are not constantly reacting, but steadily raising the bar. This will we go next. So let's talk about the how to future-proof our system so that design like an attacker, build like an engineer is in today's practice. It's built to last. First, build a security-first culture. Technology won't matter if people treat security as an afterthought. From leadership to developers, security must be viewed as an integral part of security, the quality. Every design should answer, how do we secure this? Next is the adopting the zero trust in stages. You don't flip a switch or you start where you don't boil the ocean and all together. You start where it matters the most, protect the customer data, enforce MFA everywhere, and then gradually expand the least privilege and continuous verification across networks, devices, and behaviors. Third is the secure the supply chain. Attackers love one supplier, many victims. Maintain an SBOM, update dependencies promptly, vet vendors for their practices, harden build pipelines. We have seen the risk in the wild. The SolarWind example was already given. Kaseya and Move It is little. The fourth is the leverage AI and automation wisely. Use AI to spot anomalies, accelerate the investigations, and automate the first response. The scale of threat demands machines, but the judgment still belongs to us. Finally, commit to continuous improvement. Threats will shift. Quantum may loom tomorrow. Regulations may change next year. Update your threat models, run pen tests, red team exercises, and study breaches in your industry before this happens to you. The principles doesn't change. Least privilege, defense in depth, layered resilience, but how you apply them is a must constantly evolving theory. Transitioning, so let's wrap this up with all the key takeaways and a practical 30, 60, 90-day action plan before you can start immediately. First, design like an attacker. That means proactive shifting security left, map abuse cases, threat model features, and bake in security defaults before code ships. Second is the build like an engineer. the 24 and 25 threat landscapes demands it. Attackers are faster, wiser in targeting things we used to overlook. Your CI/CD pipeline, your help desk software, not just your firewall. Third is the most breaches are preventable. They often come to basics, no MFA, default configs, and missing validation in code. If we analyze real incidents and ask what simply could have prevented this and then actually implement it, we dramatically reduce risk. Sorry. Next step is your 90 days, 30, 60, 90 days plan. First is to make MFA as a universal and the baseline. 60 days to segment at least one high-value service, enforce short-lived service credentials, and add drift detection for critical configs. Then in the last, you run a red team exercise against the app, rehearse a clean rebuild from golden image, and publish your secure coding checklist as an organization standard. So each improvement builds momentum towards the system that defends themselves. Finally, security is not just one-time project, it's a posture. The vision is basically optimistic. By designing the attackers and building like engineers, we make incidents rare, we limit their impact, and we keep enterprises running smoothly. Before we wrap up, I've included a few key resources that you can explore after today's session. These cover industry perspectives, research findings, and practical frameworks on secure by construction principles from leading organizations. I encourage you to review them, share them with your teams, and see how these ideas can be adapted to your environments. Thank you for listening. We are coming from Dallas for today's session. You can connect with us on this LinkedIn if you want to.
Anyone have any question? All right. So I think we can wrap it up. If you have any follow-up question, please feel to ping us directly on LinkedIn. We are good to coordinate afterwards as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.